She is too old for marriage. The 50-year-old spinster found love with a young warrior. She lived in a small, humble house on the edge of her village, where the fields stretched out into golden plains, and the hills in the distance touched the sky. Every morning, she would wake up with the soft sunlight spilling through her window and start her day with small rituals. She brewed tea, watered the few plants she had carefully tended over the years, and listened to the songs of birds that gathered around her garden. Life to most seemed uneventful, yet for Amina it was full of small joys and quiet comforts. In her youth, Amina had been full of dreams, just like any other young girl. She had imagined marriage, children, and a house filled with laughter. But life had not taken her in that direction. One by one, her friends had married and started families. Invitations to weddings, engagement celebrations, and family gatherings often reminded her of a path she had never walked. While many saw her as a spinster, someone who had missed her chance, Amina tried not to let society's whispers touch her spirit. She had learned to create happiness in her own way. Her neighbors, at first, had been curious about her life. They often wondered why she remained unmarried, thinking there must be some reason or secret. Some whispered gently, "She is too old for marriage now," while others advised her to focus on herself rather than hope for a relationship. At first, such words had stung. She had felt the weight of disappointment, the small ache of watching others live the life she had imagined. But over time, Amina learned to ignore these murmurs. She found comfort in her work, her routines, and the small acts of kindness she could offer to others. Amina's days were filled with a gentle rhythm. She would visit the village market to buy fresh vegetables and fruits, exchanging smiles and greetings with the shopkeepers who knew her well. Children often ran past her, laughing and playing, and sometimes they stopped to ask for her advice or a sweet treat. She enjoyed these moments. They reminded her that life was still full of connection and meaning, even if it was different from the dreams of her youth. In the evenings, she would sit by the window, sipping her tea and watching the sky change colors. The orange, pink, and purple hues made her feel alive, reminding her that beauty existed in every moment if one paid attention. Despite her peaceful life, Amina occasionally felt a deep, quiet longing. It was not just for companionship, but for the simple feeling of having someone who understood her completely. She sometimes thought of the life she could have had, imagining conversations with a partner, quiet walks in the fields, or sharing a laugh over small, everyday things. These thoughts were bittersweet. They reminded her of the love she had never experienced, but they also kept a spark of hope alive in her heart. Amina refused to let herself be bitter. Instead, she nurtured hope quietly, believing that life could still surprise her. Her family had their own lives, living in distant towns or even cities. They cared for her deeply, but their visits were infrequent. Sometimes, loneliness crept in during the evenings when the house grew silent. On such nights, Amina would light a candle, sit with a book in her lap, and allow herself to be carried away by stories of love, adventure, and courage. She liked reading about people who faced challenges and still found happiness. These stories reminded her that life was unpredictable, and that courage and patience often led to joy. Friends in the village sometimes tried to involve her in matchmaking attempts, introducing her to men who they thought would be suitable. Amina listened politely, sometimes even went on brief meetings, but nothing ever felt right. She realized that age did not define a person's readiness for love, nor did it guarantee compatibility. She wanted something real, something heartfelt, not a decision made out of societal expectation or sympathy. She had learned to trust her instincts, to value her own happiness over pleasing others. Despite society's labels, Amina remained respected in the village. People admired her for her kindness, wisdom, and the quiet strength she carried. She helped the elderly, guided children with their studies, and sometimes resolved disputes with gentle advice. While she might not have had a family of her own, she had created a community that valued her presence. The villagers often remarked that she had a heart far bigger than most, and a mind sharp enough to navigate life's many challenges. In her solitude, Amina had discovered an inner strength and independence that many envied. Yet, there were moments when Amina felt the ache of being left behind. Weddings, birthdays, and festivals sometimes reminded her that she was alone in a way others were not. She would see couples walking together, holding hands or sharing laughter, and a quiet pang of longing would stir in her chest. But she did not let it consume her. Instead, she would focus on small acts of joy, a new flower in her garden, a letter from a distant friend, or a freshly baked loaf of bread. Life, she realized, was made up of moments, and even if some were tinged with sadness, many were full of beauty and warmth. One of Amina's greatest strengths was her ability to dream, even when hope seemed distant. She often imagined a life where love arrived unexpectedly, where companionship came in the form of understanding, laughter, and shared respect. It was not a young love she imagined, nor a rushed romance, but something deeper, a bond that went beyond appearances, age, or expectations. She believed that love was not just about youth or timing. It was about connection, empathy, and the courage to be vulnerable with another person. Amina's mornings often began with reflection. She would take a slow walk through the nearby fields, feeling the cool breeze against her skin. She noticed the small details, the way the sunlight glinted on a blade of grass, the rhythm of birds in flight, the distant laughter of children. These simple observations grounded her and reminded her that life, even when quiet, was full of moments worth living. She would carry these reflections into her day, allowing them to shape her interactions, her decisions, and her dreams. Though Amina had lived half a century without romantic love, she had not lost faith in it. Deep inside, she believed that life had a way of surprising those who waited patiently, who nurtured kindness, and who remained open to possibilities. She did not seek love desperately, nor did she define herself by its absence. Instead, she lived fully, with dignity, compassion, and hope. She understood that the right connection would come when the timing and circumstances were right. Evenings in her home were a time of quiet reflection. Amina would prepare a simple meal, often humming softly as she worked. She would sit by her window with a cup of tea, letting her mind wander through memories of the past and hopes for the future. Sometimes she felt a twinge of sadness, acknowledging that life had taken unexpected turns. But she also felt a deep sense of gratitude for the resilience she had developed, the friendships she had nurtured, and the life she had built on her own terms. Amina's story was one of patience, courage, and quiet strength. Though society labeled her as too old for marriage, she had discovered that her life was full of meaning, even without romantic love. She had built a world around herself that was rich in friendship, service, and personal growth. And yet, beneath the calm exterior, there was always a small flicker of hope, a belief that life could still surprise her in ways she had never imagined. It was this hope that gave Amina her sparkle, a light that drew people to her. She carried herself with grace, spoke with wisdom, and treated everyone with kindness. People admired her not for who she had married or what she had achieved in conventional terms, but for the way she lived her life fully, with dignity and heart. And deep inside, Amina knew that one day, perhaps unexpectedly, life might bring a new chapter, a story of companionship and love that was waiting patiently for her, just as she had waited for so many years. Amina's life, though peaceful, was about to experience an unexpected turn. One morning, as the village prepared for its annual festival, she noticed a new energy in the air. The streets were filled with colorful decorations, children running with laughter, and the scent of fresh flowers mixing with the aroma of home-cooked meals. Villagers were busy setting up stalls, preparing sweets and rehearsing songs for the celebration. Amina, though she enjoyed the quiet of her routine, felt a spark of excitement. Festivals had always reminded her of joy, connection, and the beauty of shared experiences. It was during this festival that she first saw him, Armin, a young warrior who had come from a neighboring village. He was not like anyone she had ever met before. His posture was confident, yet relaxed, and his eyes carried a depth of kindness that immediately caught her attention. He wore simple clothes suited for traveling, but there was a quiet strength in the way he moved. Villagers whispered among themselves, noting his presence with curiosity. He was visiting for the festival, they said, but there was something about him that seemed different, something that made people take notice. Their first encounter was by chance. A stray dog, frightened by the noise of drums and laughter, had wandered too close to the river. It slipped and got trapped between rocks near the riverbank. Amina had been passing by when she heard its distressed barking. She rushed closer, but the dog was too scared to move. She tried calling it gently, but the animal trembled, unsure of whether to trust her. That was when Armin appeared, seemingly out of nowhere. Without hesitation, he knelt by the river, speaking softly to the dog and slowly extending a hand. Amina watched, impressed by the calm patience he showed. Unlike many who would have shooed the animal or panicked, Armin took the time to understand its fear. Step by step, he managed to guide the dog out of the rocks, and eventually it scrambled safely onto the bank. Amina felt a mixture of relief and admiration. "Thank you," she said softly, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt in years. "You have a gentle way with animals." Armin smiled, brushing his hand on his trousers to remove the mud. "Animals feel what we feel," he replied. "If we are calm, they can trust us. I learned that when I was a boy." His voice was calm, steady, and surprisingly kind. There was a sincerity in his words that made Amina want to listen more. She realized, almost instinctively, that he was someone who treated every living thing with respect and care. From that day, small conversations began between them. Armin would visit the village each day of the festival, often stopping to chat with Amina. They talked about simple things at first, whether the festival preparations, the beauty of the village. But gradually, their conversations grew deeper. Amina shared stories of her life, her garden, and her love for reading, while Armin spoke of his journeys, his training as a warrior, and the lessons he had learned along the way. Their words created a bridge between two worlds, hers of quiet reflection and his of adventure and movement. The villagers watched this budding friendship with interest. Some were curious, others skeptical. Many whispered about the difference in their ages. "She is much older than him," they murmured. What could they possibly have in common? But Amina paid little attention to gossip. She valued connection and sincerity over judgment and appearances. There was a spark of joy in talking to Armin, something she had almost forgotten existed. His presence brought life into her quiet world, and she welcomed it with cautious excitement. Over time, their friendship grew through shared activities. Armin would help Amina carry firewood, repair a broken fence, or fetch supplies from the market. Amina, in turn, offered him lessons in gardening, taught him simple recipes, and shared stories from her favorite books. They laughed at small mistakes, learned from each other, and enjoyed the comfort of companionship. Amina felt a warmth in her chest she had not experienced in decades, a feeling that perhaps life could still hold surprises for her. One afternoon, they went together to the edge of the village, where a small hill overlooked the fields. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with brilliant shades of orange and pink. Amina felt a strange calmness as she watched Armin point out the distant hills and share tales of places he had visited. He spoke with such passion and wonder that she felt as if she were traveling with him, seeing the world through his eyes. In those moments, the age difference seemed irrelevant. What mattered was the connection, the laughter, and the shared sense of wonder. Despite the joy and laughter, there were quiet moments of reflection. Amina sometimes thought about the impossibility of what was happening. She reminded herself of her age, the years she had lived without love, and the expectations of society. Yet when she looked at Armin, she saw kindness, respect, and a genuine interest in her life. His presence reminded her that friendship, and perhaps more, could bloom even in the most unexpected circumstances. Armin, for his part, was drawn to Amina's wisdom and warmth. He admired her strength, her independence, and the way she navigated life with dignity. He had grown up hearing tales of courage and valor, but here was someone whose bravery was quiet, steady, and constant. She had faced life's challenges alone, and yet remained kind and open-hearted. It inspired him and made him want to learn more about her world, her experiences, and her perspective. Their connection was built not on grand gestures but on small, meaningful moments. A shared smile, a helping hand, a story told over the evening tea. These simple acts became the foundation of a friendship that both treasured deeply. Amina found herself looking forward to Armin's visits, feeling a thrill at the sound of his voice and a comfort in his company. Armin, too, sought her advice, valued her thoughts, and began to realize that her presence brought a sense of peace and joy he had never experienced before. Evening walks became a routine. They would stroll through the village, sometimes in silence, sometimes sharing stories. Amina taught Armin the names of flowers, the patterns of the birds, and the little signs in nature that often went unnoticed. Armin shared tales of distant lands, of mountains he had climbed, and the challenges he had overcome. These walks created a sense of closeness that words alone could not capture. With each step, trust and admiration grew between them. Despite the blossoming friendship, Amina remained cautious. She knew the world could be harsh and judgmental, and she did not want her heart to be hurt. Yet, she could not deny the happiness that Armin's presence brought. She allowed herself small moments of joy, appreciating the connection without rushing toward anything she was not ready for. The balance between hope and caution became a delicate dance, one that she navigated with patience and grace. By the end of the festival, something had shifted in the village. People began to notice the gentle bond forming between Amina and Armin. Children whispered and laughed, adults watched with curiosity, and some even began to question their own assumptions about age and love. Amina herself realized that life had offered her a gift, an unexpected friendship that carried the potential for something more. She did not know where it would lead, but she felt a renewed sense of hope and excitement that she had not felt in years. The festival concluded, leaving memories of laughter, music, and shared joy. Amina returned to her quiet home, but her thoughts lingered on the young warrior who had entered her life. She found herself smiling at small reminders of him, the way he had rescued the dog, the stories he had shared, and the warmth in his eyes. For the first time in a long while, she felt that life was unpredictable, full of possibilities, and capable of surprising even those who thought they had seen it all. And so, their friendship continued to grow, built on respect, kindness, and shared experiences. Amina's quiet world had begun to open in ways she had never imagined. She discovered that connection, whether through laughter, stories, or simple acts of care, could bring life into even the most ordinary days. And though society might question the bond, she knew that what mattered most was the joy, trust, and genuine affection that flourished between them. In those days, Amina realized that life was capable of offering second chances, even at 50. She learned that happiness could arrive in unexpected forms, and that age was never a barrier to meaningful connection. Every shared smile, every story exchanged, and every moment spent together deepened a bond that was quietly powerful and profoundly transformative. Little did she know, this friendship was only the beginning of a journey that would challenge her heart, inspire her spirit, and ultimately redefine everything she thought she knew about love and life. As the weeks turned into months, the bond between Amina and Armin deepened in. ways that neither of them had anticipated. What had begun as a simple act of kindness, rescuing the stray dog, had grown into a friendship filled with laughter, shared stories, and quiet companionship. Yet, alongside the joy of these moments, both Amina and Armin began to feel something more profound stirring in their hearts. There was a tenderness, a gentle pull that neither could ignore. Amina found herself thinking of Armin at unexpected times. Sometimes, while tending her garden or preparing her meals, she would recall a story he had told, or the way his eyes lit up when he spoke of a distant village he had visited. These memories brought a warmth she could not quite describe, a flutter of excitement that made her chest feel light. She realized that her feelings were growing deeper than friendship, and yet a part of her hesitated. After 50 years of solitude, after decades of living quietly and cautiously, she wondered if it was wise to open her heart to someone so young, someone so full of life and energy. Armin, too, began to notice the change in his own emotions. He admired Amina's wisdom, her calm strength, and the way she approached life with grace. He found himself seeking her presence more often, valuing her opinions and relishing their long conversations. He noticed how she listened intently, how her laughter filled the quiet corners of the village, and how her kindness seemed to touch everyone she met. He began to feel that his admiration was transforming into something far more personal, a deep respect, coupled with affection that he could no longer ignore. One afternoon, they decided to visit the nearby hills, a place where the village met the sprawling fields. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the land. They walked together in silence for a while, each step echoing with the sounds of nature, the wind rustling the leaves, birds calling to each other, and the soft crunch of grass beneath their feet. Amina felt a strange mixture of excitement and fear. She knew that her feelings were changing, and yet she was unsure how to express them. Breaking the silence, Armin spoke softly. "Amina, have you ever wondered if life has surprises in store for us, even when we think we've seen it all?" His voice carried a gentle curiosity, as if he too was trying to understand the feelings that had begun to take root between them. Amina looked at him, feeling her heart quicken. She nodded, unable to put her thoughts into words. How could she explain the flutter of hope she had felt for so long, now awakened by someone she had only recently met? As they reached the top of the hill, the view took her breath away. The village below looked like a patchwork of fields and homes, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun. Amina felt a sense of freedom, a momentary escape from the weight of years and expectations. Armin noticed the way she gazed at the horizon, the calm yet thoughtful expression on her face, and he felt a surge of admiration. He wanted to tell her how much she had come to mean to him, but he also wanted to respect the careful pace of their growing connection. Over the next days, subtle changes began to appear in their interactions. Their conversations grew more personal, touching on dreams, fears, and the small moments that had shaped their lives. Amina shared stories from her youth, memories of her family, and the lessons she had learned from years of living independently. Armin, in turn, revealed experiences from his travels, the challenges he had faced, and the values he held dear. With every story shared, their trust in one another deepened, creating a sense of intimacy that neither had anticipated. However, the blossoming emotions were not without their challenges. The villagers who had watched their friendship with curiosity began to murmur more openly. Some questioned the age difference, expressing doubt and concern. "It is unusual," they said. "Can they truly understand each other?" Amina heard these words, and though they stung slightly, she reminded herself that her happiness should not be dictated by others' opinions. She had spent decades living according to her own principles, and now she was learning that her heart had its own voice. Armin faced his own doubts. Though he cared deeply for Amina, he knew that society would judge them harshly. He worried about her comfort and how others might perceive their bond. Yet, he could not ignore the feelings that had grown within him. He respected Amina too much to rush or force anything, but he also wanted her to know that she mattered deeply to him. In quiet moments, he would find himself thinking of ways to show her his sincerity, to make her feel valued and understood. One rainy afternoon, they found themselves sheltering under the roof of a small village shop. The rain poured down, drumming against the tiles, and the village seemed to pause in the gentle hush that accompanied a storm. They spoke little, sharing only the quiet warmth of each other's presence. Amina felt a comfort she had rarely known, a sense that someone truly saw her, understood her, and valued her for who she was. Armin felt the same, appreciating not only her kindness but the depth of her spirit. In that shared silence, they both sensed that their feelings were shifting from friendship to something deeper, though neither was ready to name it aloud. As days passed, their bond became more evident through small gestures. Armin would notice the way Amina preferred certain flowers, or how she liked her tea. He began to remember these details, surprising her with thoughtful actions that made her smile. Amina, in return, found herself looking forward to his visits, feeling a quiet anticipation whenever she heard his footsteps approaching. Their connection was gentle yet powerful, rooted in mutual respect, admiration, and the beginning of love that neither could ignore. Despite the growing emotions, both remained careful. They understood the fragility of feelings, especially after years of solitude and caution. Amina, in particular, reflected on the possibility of heartache. She had learned through decades of life that hope must be tempered with patience, and that trust must be earned slowly. Yet, she could not deny the joy Armin brought to her days, the laughter, the shared stories, and the simple comfort of knowing someone cared deeply. Armin, too, navigated his emotions with care. He admired Amina's resilience and independence, recognizing that her heart was not easily swayed. He approached their growing feelings with respect, showing that love was not just about words, but about consistent action and understanding. He sought to create moments that would demonstrate his care, building a foundation of trust that could withstand the doubts of society and the challenges of life. The villagers began to notice more subtle signs of their closeness, the way they laughed together, the thoughtful gestures, and the quiet understanding that seemed to exist between them. Some began to question their own assumptions about age and love, wondering if perhaps connection mattered more than appearances. Yet, there were still whispers and cautious glances. Both Amina and Armin chose to ignore judgment, focusing instead on the sincerity of their feelings and the joy of shared moments. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, they sat together by the village well, watching the sky turn shades of gold and pink. Armin turned to Amina, his voice gentle. "I never imagined I could feel this way, but being with you, it feels right." Amina looked at him, her heart swelling with emotion. She felt the truth of his words in the quiet depth of her own feelings. Though she had feared disappointment, she now realized that love could indeed arrive in unexpected forms, even after 50 years of solitude. That night, Amina reflected on the changes in her heart. She understood that what she felt for Armin was more than friendship. It was admiration, affection, and a growing sense of love. The realization was both exhilarating and daunting. She had spent so long living quietly, protecting her heart, and now it was opening again, slowly and cautiously, to someone who respected and cherished her. Armin, in his own thoughts, felt a similar awakening. He had never considered that age would be a barrier to meaningful connection. What mattered most, he realized, was the depth of understanding, respect, and the joy of sharing life with someone who truly cared. With Amina, he found all of these things and more. The bond they shared had grown into a quiet, powerful love, one that was not bound by society's expectations or conventions. And so, their story reached a turning point. Friendship had blossomed into love, gentle but undeniable. Both Amina and Armin faced the emotions with care, patience, and respect, knowing that the path ahead would require courage and understanding. They had discovered that love was not about age, status, or what others might think. It was about connection, trust, and the willingness to open one's heart despite years of caution. In these days, Amina felt a renewal of spirit. Life, which she had thought was complete in its quiet rhythm, had begun to surprise her. She realized that love was not a matter of timing, but of meeting the right person at the right moment, even if that moment came later in life. Armin had brought light into her world, showing her that second chances were possible, and that the heart could still find joy and companionship when it was least expected. As Amina and Armin's bond grew stronger, the quiet harmony of their lives began to encounter the harsh realities of the outside world. In a village where tradition shaped almost every thought and action, their unusual friendship was becoming more noticeable. The villagers whispered more frequently now, some curious, some disapproving. "Why is he spending so much time with her?" they asked. "She is far older than him. It cannot last." These murmurs reached Amina's ears, and though she had grown accustomed to gossip over the years, she felt a sting this time. The happiness she had found was suddenly under scrutiny, as if the joy she had earned was being questioned simply because it defied convention. Amina tried to ignore the whispers, focusing on her garden, her daily routines, and the gentle companionship of Armin. Yet she could not entirely escape the feeling that others were watching, judging, and perhaps even hoping for her to falter. She had lived for 50 years with independence and dignity, but the thought of external disapproval weighed heavily on her. She wondered whether pursuing this growing affection was worth the potential criticism and misunderstanding from those she had lived among all her life. Armin, too, felt the weight of society's eyes. He had always been confident, courageous, and unafraid of challenges, but this situation was different. People were quick to judge based on age, tradition, and expectation, and he could not help but feel protective of Amina. He respected her too much to push for anything that might make her uncomfortable or attract unwanted attention. Yet, at the same time, he could not ignore his own feelings. Every glance, every conversation, every quiet smile between them strengthened the bond he felt, making it harder to retreat. Their growing love was tested in subtle but significant ways. During village gatherings, they would notice curious looks or whispered remarks, and sometimes children, unaware of social rules, would innocently question their connection. At first, Amina felt a surge of embarrassment, recalling all the years she had lived quietly, avoiding attention. But over time, she realized that she could not allow the opinions of others to dictate the way she felt. Her heart had found warmth, and she had to honor that truth. Armin found ways to support her quietly, showing care without fanfare. He would walk beside her when they went into town, listen patiently when she expressed doubts, and reassure her through small, meaningful gestures. One day, as they returned from a walk, Amina admitted her fears softly, almost as if confessing a secret. "I worry about what people will think," she said. "I've lived so long being careful, and now I don't want to be judged for feeling this way." Armin took her hand gently, meeting her gaze with steady eyes. "Let them whisper," he said. "What matters is what we know in our hearts. We cannot control their thoughts, but we can choose how we live our own lives." These words gave Amina strength she had not realized she needed. She began to understand that courage was not only about facing life alone, but also about standing for the love and happiness she deserved. Her feelings for Armin were genuine, and she had every right to embrace them despite the age difference and societal expectations. Slowly, she let herself smile more freely, laugh more openly, and cherish the quiet moments of connection they shared. Even with this inner courage, challenges were unavoidable. Some villagers began to question Armin's intentions, worried that he might be drawn to Amina out of curiosity or novelty rather than sincere affection. Others suggested that Amina was taking a risk, that her heart might be broken if things did not work out. These concerns, though often voiced as advice, carried a heavy weight. Amina and Armin had to navigate not only their own emotions, but also the judgments of those who did not understand the depth of their bond. One afternoon, Amina received a visit from a distant relative who had come to see how she was doing. The relative was well-meaning but could not hide the surprise when she saw Armin helping Amina in her garden. "He is so young," the relative said. "Are you sure this is wise? You have worked so hard to build a life of peace. Why risk it now?" Amina felt a mixture of frustration and sadness. She loved her family, but she also knew that they could not fully understand the quiet joy that Armin had brought into her life. With patience, she explained that age did not define the value of connection, that respect and kindness mattered more than appearances. Her words were met with cautious nods, but she knew that convincing others would take time. Armin's support became even more vital during these moments. He understood the subtle pressures Amina faced and offered reassurance without demanding. He recognized that patience and consistency were crucial. Every thoughtful gesture, every word of encouragement, every shared smile helped Amina feel safe and validated. Slowly, the village began to notice the depth of their connection, not just the age difference, but the genuine care, respect, and affection that existed between them. Despite these challenges, Amina and Armin continued to nurture their relationship in small but meaningful ways. They shared quiet mornings in the garden, evenings walking under the stars, and afternoons reading together or discussing dreams and plans. Each moment built trust and understanding, creating a bond that was resilient in the face of gossip, skepticism, and doubt. They discovered that love was not just a feeling, but a deliberate act of attention, patience, and care. As time passed, Amina noticed a subtle shift in herself. She no longer felt the same hesitation or fear when facing society's opinions. Instead, she found a quiet confidence in her choices, knowing that the life she was building with Armin was authentic and true. She had spent years living carefully, measured by others' expectations, and now she realized that courage meant embracing her own happiness regardless of outside judgment. Armin, for his part, had also grown in understanding and empathy. He saw that love required more than attraction. It required listening, patience, and a willingness to navigate life's obstacles together. He admired Amina's wisdom, her resilience, and the way she carried herself with dignity even in the face of criticism. Every challenge they faced became an opportunity to deepen their bond, to show that love could thrive even when the world seemed uncertain or disapproving. One day, a significant test arrived. A small incident in the village, a misunderstanding during a market day, led to more intense gossip. Some villagers questioned whether Armin's attentions were proper, while others suggested that Amina should distance herself. For a brief moment, both felt the pressure of social expectation pressing down, but instead of letting it weaken them, they used it as a chance to affirm their feelings. Amina spoke with clarity and calmness, explaining that her happiness was valid, that Armin's presence in her life was genuine, and that love did not have an expiration date. Armin supported her quietly but firmly, showing through his actions that their bond was built on trust and respect, not societal approval. These moments strengthened their connection. Amina realized that love was not only about joy and companionship, but also about facing obstacles together, protecting each other, and standing for the truth of their feelings. Armin understood that commitment meant patience, understanding, and unwavering support. Together, they learned that society's judgments could be acknowledged, but did not have to define their choices. Slowly, the village began to adjust to their unusual friendship. Some people who had initially been skeptical started to admire the way they supported and respected each other. Children, who were often the first to notice genuine connections, observed their kindness and thoughtfulness, and in their innocent way, accepted the relationship without question. Even some elders, who initially raised eyebrows, began to recognize that age was less important than respect, trust, and care. Through these challenges, Amina discovered a resilience she had not realized she possessed. She understood that love, while joyful, required courage, the courage to face criticism, to assert one's happiness, and to trust in another person fully. Armin's steadfast presence gave her the strength to embrace this courage. He did not demand change, nor did he insist on ignoring reality. Instead, he walked beside her, sharing the burden and helping her navigate the complexities of both emotion and society. By the end of this period, their bond had become more than friendship. It was a partnership built on respect, patience, and a shared understanding of life's challenges. They had faced judgment, doubt, and societal pressure, and yet their affection had only grown stronger. They learned that love could thrive not only in joyful moments, but also in the resilience and support offered during trials. Amina reflected on the journey so far, recognizing that her life had been transformed by Armin's presence. She had experienced joy, companionship, and the courage to hope again. Her heart, which had been quiet for decades, had found a rhythm, a pulse of life that had been waiting for the right connection. She realized that love was not limited by age, circumstance, or society's expectations. It was about connection, trust, and shared courage. Armin, too, felt the depth of this understanding. He recognized that Amina's wisdom, kindness, and resilience had changed his perspective on life and love. She had taught him patience, respect, and the power of emotional depth. Together, they had faced challenges, and together they had grown stronger, discovering that love was not merely a fleeting emotion, but a steady force that could sustain and inspire. And so, as days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, Amina and Armin continued to nurture their love, building a life that was quiet yet profound. They had faced the first waves of societal judgment and emerged stronger, their hearts connected not by convention, but by the genuine affection and understanding they shared. The challenges of the outside world had not diminished their bond. Instead, they had illuminated the strength, courage, and beauty of a love that was real, meaningful, and enduring. With each passing day, the love between Amina and Armin grew stronger, built on trust, understanding, and the courage to defy expectations. The earlier doubts, societal pressures, and whispers of judgment had gradually begun to fade, replaced by a quiet admiration from those who witnessed their unwavering connection. The villagers, once skeptical, slowly began to see the authenticity in their bond. They noticed the care with which Armin treated Amina, the respect she showed in return, and the joy that radiated from their shared moments. Amina herself had reached a place of quiet confidence. She no longer feared the opinions of others, knowing that the life she shared with Armin was honest, kind, and meaningful. Her heart had opened fully, no longer guarded by decades of caution and societal expectation. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, a peace that came from embracing love on her own terms. Each smile, each gesture, each conversation with Armin reinforced the truth she had come to understand. Happiness and companionship are never bound by age. Armin, too, had grown into his role as a partner, not just a friend or admirer. He approached their relationship with thoughtfulness, always attentive to Amina's comfort and feelings. He celebrated her wisdom, her courage, and the life she had built independently. He saw not the years she had lived, but the richness of her experiences, the kindness she offered to everyone around her, and the strength she carried within. In return, Amina celebrated him for his courage, his compassion, and the gentle way he had entered her life and changed it profoundly. Their days together were filled with simple joys that carried profound meaning. They continued their walks through the village and fields, enjoying the warmth of the sun and the beauty of nature. They tended the garden together, laughed at small mishaps, and shared stories that made them feel closer than ever. Sometimes they sat quietly, enjoying the presence of one another, knowing that the silence between them spoke volumes. It was in these moments that the depth of their love was most apparent, a love rooted in understanding, patience, and mutual respect. The community's gradual acceptance brought relief and happiness to both. Neighbors who had once whispered now smiled knowingly when they saw the pair together. Even some of the elders who had initially expressed concern began to offer their quiet blessings. The village, it seemed, had slowly come to understand that love is not defined by age but by sincerity, respect, and the joy it brings to those involved. This acceptance, though subtle, reinforced Amina's belief that love could flourish despite societal expectations. However, their journey was not without moments of introspection. Amina often reflected on the extraordinary path her life had taken, from decades of solitude to the unexpected gift of companionship. She marveled at the resilience of the heart, the capacity to hope, and the courage it took to open herself to love once again. Each day with Armin reminded her that life's surprises could arrive at any stage, and that the heart's capacity for joy and connection is boundless. Armin, too, reflected on his journey. He had encountered many challenges as a young warrior, but none as profound as the emotional depth he discovered with Amina. Her presence had taught him patience, empathy, and the quiet strength found in unwavering support. He realized that love was not just about passion or excitement. It was about commitment, understanding, and walking through life together with shared purpose and respect. Their relationship reached a turning point one afternoon when Armin, with careful planning and heartfelt words, expressed his desire to formalize their bond. He did not do so in a grand, ostentatious manner, but rather with sincerity and humility. He spoke of the respect, admiration, and love he felt for Amina, acknowledging the challenges they had faced and expressing his wish to continue their journey together as life partners. Amina listened with tears in her eyes, moved by the depth of his words and the authenticity of his feelings. The decision to unite their lives was met with quiet celebration rather than extravagance. They chose a small, meaningful ceremony surrounded by those who had supported them, neighbors, friends, and family members who had come to understand the purity of their bond. The day was filled with laughter, shared stories, and heartfelt wishes, symbolizing not just their union but the triumph of love over societal expectation. Amina wore a simple dress that reflected her elegance and dignity, while Armin's gentle demeanor spoke volumes of his respect and devotion. The villagers, witnessing this union, began to reflect on their own assumptions about love and age. Many were inspired by the courage and sincerity displayed by Amina and Armin. Their story became a quiet lesson in empathy, patience, and the understanding that love is not constrained by convention. Even those who had initially expressed doubt could not deny the authenticity and warmth radiating from the couple. The union became a symbol of hope and possibility, showing that life's surprises could bring joy at any stage. Life together was a blend of continuity and change. Amina continued her routines, her love for the garden, her quiet walks, and her reflections on life, but now she did so with Armin by her side. Their shared experiences brought new meaning to daily activities, transforming ordinary moments into memories filled with connection and joy. Armin, while continuing his duties as a young warrior, found balance in this partnership, cherishing the stability, wisdom, and warmth Amina provided. Together, they navigated life's challenges, celebrated its victories, and supported each other in times of difficulty. One of the most profound realizations for both was the recognition of how much they had grown through their journey. Amina had rediscovered hope, joy, and the thrill of companionship, while Armin had learned patience, empathy, and the beauty of a deep emotional connection. Their love was not a fleeting romance but a sustained, nurturing partnership that had been strengthened by shared trials, mutual respect, and unwavering support. They also discovered the joy of inspiring others. Young couples in the village looked to them as an example of love that transcended societal norms. Elders admired the patience and care they demonstrated, while children saw in their story a lesson in empathy, kindness, and the courage to follow one's heart. Amina and Armin realized that their bond had the power to influence and teach, extending beyond their personal happiness to touch the lives of those around them. Even in moments of quiet solitude, they found fulfillment. Amina would sometimes reflect on the life she had lived before meeting Armin, the years of independence, patience, and quiet strength, and recognize how those experiences had prepared her for this chapter. Armin, in turn, appreciated the lessons of resilience and wisdom Amina had imparted, understanding that true partnership involves growth, understanding, and the willingness to face life's uncertainties together. As years passed, their love remained steady, unshaken by time or circumstance. They continued to walk hand in hand through the village, tend their garden, and enjoy each other's company in the small but meaningful moments of everyday life. The age difference, once a source of concern for others, became irrelevant in the face of their genuine affection and unwavering respect for one another. Their story was no longer a subject of curiosity, but a testament to the power of love, patience, and understanding. Amina often smiled at the thought that life had surprised her in the most wonderful way. What she had once thought was a quiet, solitary existence had transformed into a life rich with companionship, joy, and shared purpose. She realized that it was never too late to find love, that hope could flourish even after decades of waiting, and that the heart's capacity for happiness is limitless when nurtured with patience and sincerity. Armin, too, felt a profound gratitude for the journey they had shared. He had learned that love is not defined by age, society, or expectation, but by authenticity, respect, and a willingness to embrace the other person fully. He cherished every moment with Amina, recognizing that their bond was a rare and precious gift, strengthened by the challenges they had faced and the courage they had shown. Together, Amina and Armin built a life that was quiet, meaningful, and full of love. Their days were filled with shared laughter, thoughtful conversation, and the simple joys that make life beautiful. They faced challenges with courage, celebrated victories with humility, and nurtured their bond with care. In each other they found not just love, but partnership, friendship, and a shared sense of purpose that made life richer and more fulfilling than either had imagined. In the end, Amina's story became a symbol of hope and possibility. She had lived 50 years thinking that love had passed her by, only to discover that life could surprise her in the most extraordinary way. With Armin, she found companionship, joy, and the courage to embrace life fully. Their love was not defined by convention, but by authenticity, respect, and the unwavering commitment to one another. Together, they proved that it is never too late to find happiness, that age is no barrier to love, and that life's most beautiful moments often arrive when we least expect them. And so, in the quiet village where whispers of doubt had once filled the air, laughter, joy, and the story of an extraordinary love now flourished. Amina and Armin walked through life hand in hand, teaching everyone around them that love knows no bounds, that courage and patience are rewarded, and that the heart is capable of extraordinary resilience and joy. Their journey was a testament to the triumph of love, proving that when two hearts meet with respect, understanding, and genuine care, happiness can blossom in the most unexpected and wonderful ways.